Verses open. Matthew chapter 27, verses 27 to 56. Have you ever wondered why we call this day Good Friday? Why we call it Good Friday? We remember the death of a man 2,000 years ago, a man who was betrayed by someone close to him, who was abandoned by all his friends. He was falsely condemned, he was beaten, he was nailed to a cross and then placed in a tomb. We remember his death, these brutal events, and yet we call it Good Friday. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been looking at the first chapter of Genesis, haven't we? It's the first book of the Bible. It's the story of the origins of the universe. God created everything from nothing. At the end of his 6 days of creation, he looks over all that he's made and he says, "This is very good." And so on the seventh day, he rests. He stops his created works. He stops working in creation. And he rests. And he enjoys this rest with the people that he has made. This is the goal of creation. To enjoy a good world with good people in a close, intimate relationship with him. Everything is perfect. But sometime after that, everything changes, doesn't it? The people that he has made rebel against him. Satan tempts them in the Garden of Eden. They take that fruit, they eat it, the one fruit that God has told them not to eat. And because of that, everything changes. That close, intimate relationship between God and people is broken, and God sends them out of the Garden of Eden. There is no longer this perfect rest in this amazing creation with this good God. It's spoiled. Creation is spoiled, relationships are spoiled, and people are far from God. That could have been the end of the story, couldn't it? God could have said, well, I gave you your chance. I made this wonderful world. I brought you to live with me in this perfect place, and you messed it up. And so on your heads be it. It's your fault. That's it. He could have said that, couldn't he? But he didn't. And the rest of the Bible, from Genesis 4 onwards, is the story of God putting in place things to fix that problem. And Good Friday, that first Good Friday 2,000 years ago, was the day when God fixed it. It was the day when he did what was necessary to create that perfect rest with his people in a good creation. That's why it's called good. Now we're going to look at the events of that day, as recorded by Matthew's Gospel. We saw last Sunday was Palm Sunday, and we saw how last Sunday Jesus, he's entered Jerusalem on the donkey. Many people have rejoiced. They said, "Is the king. God's king has finally come. All these years we've been waiting for him." And they rejoiced that he was here. But not everyone rejoiced, did they? Not everyone celebrated. The religious leaders thought, "Who gave you this authority to do this?" And so Jesus tells them some parables. And we looked at the second parable. And in that parable, Jesus told them why he has that authority. Because he is God's son, who you are going to kill. Jesus knows they're going to kill him, and he knows they're going to kill him on the Passover. This is what he says to his disciples: "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." That was chapter 26, verse 2. But the Jewish leaders, they want him dead, so they plot. Then the chief priest and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. Judas, one of Jesus' disciples, has decided to betray them. He's gone to the religious leaders. They've given him money. And Jesus celebrates the Passover on this Thursday evening with his disciples. Afterwards, they go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus prays to his Father and prepares himself for what he knows is coming. And then, sure enough, Judas leads the soldiers to them in the garden. Judas knows where they're going to be. He leads the soldiers to Jesus, and Jesus is arrested. He's taken to the Jewish leaders for a trial, but they have no evidence against him. And so they make up their evidence. They falsely accuse him. They condemn him to death. They take him to Pontius Pilate, the governor, because the Jews, they can't kill someone, but the Roman governor can. Pilate is not convinced, but he's afraid of the Jews, isn't he? And so we read, but Pilate had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. For Jesus' friends, this is not looking like a good day, is it? Their friend, their teacher, their Lord, the one they believe to be God's king, the one they've been waiting for, the one who they hope in, he's been arrested and they know he's going to be killed and there's nothing they can do about it. It is not looking like a good day. And in verse 27 of chapter 27, we see the brutality of people, don't we? The governor's soldiers took Jesus. Verse 28, they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. They twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spat on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. These violent soldiers seem to be enjoying themselves. After they have mocked him, they led him away, verse 31, to crucify him. Jesus is able to carry the crossbeam of the cross for a bit, but after a while he's too tired, he's been beaten, and these kinds of beatings can kill a person. And so a passerby, Simon, carries the cross the remainder of the way. They take him to Golgotha, and they crucify him there. Matthew, he doesn't give us details of that because everyone knew what crucifixion meant. You were tied or nailed to a cross. Jesus was nailed. And then your body is trying to hold itself up, but as you sink lower and lower, you can't breathe. And so you keep pulling yourself up so you can breathe. But after a while, sometimes many days, you're too tired. You can't pull yourself up anymore. And you asphyxiate or you have a heart attack. People knew this, and so they didn't need those details. The pain is extreme, but it's not just physical pain, is it? There's the shame. Crucifixion was meant to be the most shameful death. It was so shameful that a Roman citizen wasn't allowed to be crucified. They would hang someone up on a cross. They'd often do it on roads so that everyone could see. They'd strip their clothes so they were naked. This was a shameful death. And for a Jew, it's even more shameful. This is Deuteronomy 21:23. Anyone hung on a tree is under God's curse. Someone who's hung on a tree is seen publicly to be cursed by God. The mockery continues. Passers-by, verse 39. The Jewish leaders, verse 41. The rebels either side of Jesus also being crucified, Verse 44, they all insult and mock Jesus. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you're the Son of God." And as we read this and we think about it, we see sin and all the brutality of sin, don't we? The violence of sin. We see envy. We see pride. We see deceit, lust for power, mockery of weakness. And we see the blindness of sin, don't we? Sin is totally blind. As Matthew writes this, he's meaning it to be ironic. The soldiers dress Jesus up as a king. They mock him for being a king. When he's hanging there, they're saying, "Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." Matthew knows. Jesus' disciples know. We know. He is the king. He is the King of the Jews. He is the King of kings. He is the Son of God. And he can, if he wants, come down from that cross. Matthew wants us to see that Jesus is not just a man, a good man, a teacher with authority, not just a miracle worker, but he is the people that everyone is saying he is. Only they're mocking him for it and not believing it because sin is blind. This is the day that humanity is shaking its fist at God, isn't it? It's the day when people rise up. They come together, the religious leaders, Judas in his greed and betrayal, the crowds bloodthirsty, weak, the Roman soldiers brutal and mocking, and they come together in their desire to get rid of this man. And we read Psalm 2 and we see what's happening. This is Psalm 2. The kings of the earth rise up, and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, "Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles." On Good Friday, they are trying to break what they call God's chains. And remember, on the Sunday, just a few days before, Jesus had told this parable about a landowner who planted a vineyard. He rented it out to farmers, and then he sent his servants at harvest time to collect the harvest. But those tenants, they beat the servants, they killed the servants, and so finally he says, "Well, I'll send my son. They'll respect my son." And the tenants see his son, and they think, right, if we kill him, he's the heir, we get the vineyard. Jesus has told them plainly, I know what you're going to do. I am God's son, and you will kill me. Ever since Adam and Eve first took that fruit, all human beings have wanted to throw off what we call the shackles of God. We want to throw off that authority that God has over us. We want to be able to, like Adam and Eve, choose what's going to be good and what's going to be evil. And so we see that in Adam and Eve's sin. We see that in what is happening on this Friday, 2,000 years ago. And we see it every day in our own hearts and in the people around us. We don't want a God who is over us. We want to be our own gods. We want to throw off these shackles. God's good authority, God's good, loving, kind authority over us, we think it's not fair. And this is sin. So as we see what these people do, let's not think that that's just somebody else over there and that's what they did. If we were there, we would have been shouting with the rest of them and mocking with the rest of them. There are no spectators in this event. And it looks like humanity is in control. We see the power in these Roman soldiers, in the crowd, in the religious leaders, in the Roman governor. We see their power to destroy a man. And we think they're in control. But actually, this is all part of the plan, isn't it? It's part of God's plan. Jesus said that. He told his disciples 3 times before, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified." And it happens just like Jesus said. We see the plan earlier in the Bible, don't we? Isaiah, 700 years before Jesus' death. This is what Isaiah wrote. "He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth." Even earlier than Isaiah, King David had written a psalm about this, Psalm 22. "Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment." This is the day that humanity rises up against God, and yet God is in complete control. Jesus willingly goes along with it. As the Apostle Paul writes, "He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." As he endures the physical pain, the public shame, and the curse of God, the punishment from God for sin. He could have just got down, couldn't he? But he doesn't. He didn't save himself so that he could save us. And I suppose the big question is, well, why did God plan this? Why did Jesus do this? Why did King David and Isaiah prophesy this? Why was this the plan? Why was it necessary? And from verse 45, we get answers, don't we? First, there's the unexplained darkness that lasts 3 hours from noon until 3 p.m. Darkness in the Bible symbolizes judgment. This is what Amos writes. "In that day declares the sovereign Lord," he's talking about the day of judgment. "In that day, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight." And so for those who know their scripture, as they watch Jesus die and they see the darkness, or don't see the darkness, they know God is judging. God is judging someone here. And that's what the darkness means. Then we also see Jesus' loud cry, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He's quoting that psalm, Psalm 22, that we read a few verses of it earlier. He's crying out to his Father in heaven, this desperate cry of dereliction. Why have you forsaken, abandoned me? The bystanders don't understand this. They think he's calling Elijah because he's saying Eli. Sounds like Elijah, doesn't it? And then he cries out again for the last time, and then he gave up his spirit. And so Matthew probably means us to understand that Jesus, he chose the time of his death. He gave up his spirit. He was in control right to his last breath. As he dies, the curtain in the temple is torn in two. Do you see that verse 51? This curtain in the temple that is a barrier between God and people. On the curtain there were angels, and these angels are like the angels who defend the Garden of Eden. When God sends Adam and Eve out of the garden, and he puts those angels with flaming swords to stop people getting to God. And the curtain in the temple is a picture of that. You can't approach God. He's holy, and you're not. And so Jesus dies, and the curtain rips. And there's an earthquake, and people rise from the dead. So we need to put these things together, don't we? The darkness of God's judgment, Jesus being forsaken by his Father, this curtain in the temple that's a barrier between God and people, split in two from top to bottom. And if we can't put those together, well, the Bible tells us, doesn't it? Isaiah writes, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." Isaiah explains what happens here, even though he's writing 700 years before it happens. God is punishing Jesus. The Son of God is forsaken by his Father for the first time in eternity, as the Father turns his face away and unleashes all of his right, good anger on all of our sin. Jesus receives it. He receives hell in our place. God lays on him the iniquity, the sin of us all. As Paul wrote, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. The temple curtain torn in two from top to bottom. God is saying, the way is open again. It's been closed since Adam and Eve rebelled against me, but now I am opening it again. My Son has done what is necessary. He has paid the price for your sin. You can approach me, even though I'm holy and you're sinful, because Jesus has paid the price for your sin. So on the day when humanity rose up against God, God came down to find us and to bring us back to him, to restore that rest that he had on day 7 of creation with the people that he's made. This is why it's Good Friday, isn't it? 1 John 4 verse 10, "This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins." Romans 5 verse 8, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." So it is Good Friday. And each of us has to make a choice, don't we? This is what God did, but we are no bystanders or spectators to this event. We are the ones who have rebelled against God, like Adam and Eve, like everyone 2,000 years ago. And so we each have a choice to make. Will we approach God through that ripped curtain, trusting in the blood of his perfect sacrifice, his son Jesus? Will we acknowledge that, yes, my sin separates me from God, and only Jesus' sacrifice can pay the price? Each of us need to see that we ourselves have sinned against God. We've rebelled against him. We deserve hell for all eternity. And only Jesus can wash us clean. Everyone needs to hear about Jesus. Everyone has a decision to make. As we thought last Sunday, didn't we, about how Jesus is the cornerstone, the rock that we'll either stumble on or who will be our cornerstone. Our decision about Jesus is the most important decision we will ever make. For those of us who are Christians already, this is a day when we reflect again on our sin, and we acknowledge the brutality, the violence, the blindness, the ugliness of my sin each and every day. The sin that Jesus took on his shoulders and received God's curse in our place. We remember, we reflect, we see our sin again, and we give thanks. We give thanks for a God who demonstrated his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for me. Christ died for us. We're going to sing, and then we're going to share the Lord's Supper together, at a time when we again remember Jesus' sacrifice for us on the cross.